museum of boring things. Tonight's exhibit, the zipper. Observe, if you will, this slender metallic trace stitched into the cotton flank of a mannequin's trousers, stoic in its service, mute in its glory. You may pass it every day, at your fly, across your coat, behind a tent flap flailing in the wind, and give it no more regard than a breadcrumb at a feast. Yet within this humble closure lies a tale of repeated failures, flamboyant patents, and teeth, so many teeth, that one begins to suspect the entire history of the modern zipper was less a technical progression and more a plot by mechanical dentists. Let us rewind then to a century and a half ago, to 1851, when Elias Howe, yes, the very same Howe, who gave us the sewing machine, filed a patent for what he modestly named an automatic continuous clothing closure. One might imagine this invention as a sort of steampunk bear trap running delicately up your shirt, though in truth it was less elegant than that. Howe, genius though he was, lacked either the marketing drive or the patience to bring it to fruition. His prototype, which resembled 2 rows of crocheted chaos being crushed together by a sliding doohickey, was neither practical nor particularly fashionable. It was, to be fair, a solution in want of a problem. And so, the zipper, as yet unborn and blissfully unaware, slumbered in the dusty archives of unused intellectual property until one Whitcomb L. Judson stepped onto the scene. Judson, a man possessed of ambition and optimism in such equal and excessive measure that he founded not just a product, but a whole company, patented his own version in 1893. He called it the clasp locker, a name so devoid of charisma it might as well have been a breakfast cereal for bureaucrats. Judson's design was charitably ambitious. It involved a series of hooks and eyes fastened by a sliding mechanism which was regrettably prone to sudden catastrophic malfunction, particularly under the strain of human motion. Indeed, contemporary accounts suggest that early adopters of the clasp locker were often found walking crabwise, attempting to minimize friction against their trousers for fear the thing would spring open like a metal-laced Venus flytrap. Still, Judson's flair for showmanship should not be underestimated. He managed to present his creation at the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, where the public gawked and the engineers winced. It was clear, however, that the concept, fastening without buttoning, sealing without sewing, had potential. Potential that required, among other things, fewer opportunities for genital peril. Enter Gideon Sundback, a Swedish-American electrical engineer, who, in 1913, quietly performed a miracle. Building upon Judson's creaky concepts, Sundback devised what he called the separable fastener, a name that sounds suspiciously like something you'd find in a Victorian romance novel's footnotes. Yet it worked. Sundback S fastener was the first design to feature opposing rows of interlocking metal teeth, essentially tiny interlacing fingers, drawn together by a Y-shaped slider. If Judson had invented the idea of zippering, Sundback had given it bones, muscles, and a strong sense of direction. His 1914 patent illustrations, now considered sacred scrolls by zipper historians, a species whose population numbers fewer than 5, depict what appears to be a mechanical centipede attempting to curtsy. Every tooth was individually crimped onto a textile tape, positioned with exquisite symmetry to engage or disengage at the whim of the slider. Unlike previous versions, Sundback's device did not merely hold things shut. It held them with such determination that even the sternest corset manufacturer might blink. This marvel became known not as the separable fastener, for no good idea survives its christening unscathed, but rather as the zipper, a term bestowed by the B.F. Goodrich Company, which used the devices on its new line of rubber galoshes in the 1920s. The sound made by the sliding mechanism, zip, struck marketing ears as delightfully onomatopoeic and just modern enough to sound vaguely like progress. And so the name stuck, adhering as tightly as the product itself. Early zippers were composed primarily of metal, brass, nickel, or even iron in the more bellicose variants. These metals were formed into teeth using stamping dies that required tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters. The tooling was complex enough to drive a man to theological doubt. Every tooth had to be symmetrical, durable, and smooth enough not to saw through fabric, or worse, flesh. One wonders how many engineers lost sleep over misaligned interlocks and the haunting specter of the jammed fly. By the mid-1930s, the zipper had made its way into the sartorial mainstream, helped along by French designers who, quite naturally, viewed it as a means of erotic expedience. American advertisements from the period extolled the virtues of zippers in children's clothing: fewer buttons, less fuss, and in men's trousers, where they promised both convenience and a certain masculine decisiveness. Imagine the posturing. One swift zip and your trousers meant business. Manufacture remained a painstaking affair. Early zipper factories looked not unlike miniaturized battleships. Rows upon rows of machinery spitting teeth onto textile bands, while armies of workers inspected every inch for imperfections. A misaligned tooth could lead to not just commercial embarrassment, but mechanical rebellion. The slider, so simple in appearance, had to be a marvel of metallurgy and geometry, wide enough to pass over the teeth with ease, narrow enough to lock them in place with a satisfying finality. It is here we must pause, not for lack of content. Heavens no, but because the lights in this wing of the museum operate on a timer, and I must attend to the matter of the janitor who insists that the mop bucket is haunted by the spirit of a misaligned zipper from 1948. We shall resume our tour shortly with tales of military uniforms, brass shortages, and the emergence of plastic teeth so smooth they might as well have been sculpted by angels with industrial design degrees. There is a peculiar comfort in precision engineering, the kind of comfort one might find in a drawer organizer or a freshly vacuumed grid of carpet fibers. It was precisely this sort of compulsion for order that brought the zipper into military service. For what is war, if not a grand theater of logistical fastenings? By the late 1930s, the zipper had found its way into uniforms, first in modest quantities, then in vast waves of clipped, zipped, and regulation-fastened garments. The U.S. military, in particular, became enamored with the zipper's efficiency. Buttons were unreliable in combat, you see. They could pop off in the middle of a bayonet charge or freeze shut in Arctic campaigns. Zippers, on the other hand, offered speed. One quick pull and a soldier's parka was sealed against wind, rain, or awkward inspection. World War II proved to be a defining moment for the zipper industry. Entire divisions of industrial capacity were redirected to the cause of closure. Brass, once an unremarkable alloy, content to sit quietly in plumbing fixtures, became a strategic resource. Zippers competed with bullets and casings for obscure corners of procurement offices, frantic debates were held. How many flies could be zipped per tank shell? The answer, while never published, was probably disappointing. To meet demand, manufacturers were forced to adapt, and adapt they did, with machine operators churning out miles upon miles of fastener tape under the watchful eye of federal inspectors. It was during this period that the Japanese company YKK began to emerge. Quietly, ominously, with the measured patience of a chess master, 5 moves into checkmate. YKK, formerly Yoshida Kogyo Kabushiki Gaisha, was founded in 1934 by Tadao Yoshida, a man of such remarkable industrial obsession that he insisted on producing not just the zipper, but the machines that made the zipper and the machines that made those machines. It was manufacturing recursion so pure it bordered on the metaphysical. Post-war, while the Allied nations licked their wounds and reorganized their supply chains, Yoshida's empire expanded. With ruthless efficiency and a charming commitment to quality, YKK zippers began appearing in garments around the world. They were smooth, reliable, and terrifyingly consistent. To this day, YKK controls roughly half of the global zipper market. Open your trousers. If there's a tiny KK engraved on the slider, you are in the grip, quite literally, of the world's least flamboyant monopoly. Meanwhile, material science marched on. Brass and nickel were noble, yes, but not without flaws. They corroded. They conducted electricity. They were, in a certain light, a bit loud. Enter synthetic polymers. The 1950s and 60s saw the rise of nylon coils, curved, flexible, and devilishly clever. These were zippers that didn't bite. They hugged. They swooshed open with a whisper. Their teeth, no longer rigid soldiers, became pliable dancers. Nylon coil zippers offered significant advantages. They could bend around corners. They resisted rust, and they weighed practically nothing, which made them perfect for light jackets, dresses, and that most noble of all storage solutions, the pencil case. Unlike metal teeth, which interlocked like drunks shaking hands, nylon coils functioned more like a zipper-S version of Velcro, spirals meeting and entwining in a mechanical embrace, not unlike 2 millipedes kissing in zero gravity. But the fashion industry, ever the peacock in a room full of pigeons, soon demanded more. More colors, more invisibility. Zippers had to disappear entirely, becoming structural, yet unseen. Thus was born the invisible zipper, a marvel of modern minimalism, in which the teeth are tucked discreetly behind fabric flaps, the slider disguised, the fastening hidden from all but the most determined of voyeurs. These were the ninjas of the zipper world, gliding undetected across cocktail dresses and evening gowns with the stealth of a sewing machine, whispering secrets in silk. Yet function would not be outdone. As clothing expanded into harsher climates, industrial uses, and even outer space, the zipper followed. In fire retardant suits, for instance, zippers were coated or constructed entirely of heat-resistant materials. Some used aramid fibers. Others employed ceramic reinforcements. You have not lived until you've seen a fireproof zipper, silent, matte, and vaguely threatening, staring back at you from the groin of a firefighter's jumpsuit. Watertight zippers, too, entered the scene. Their construction resembled something between a wetsuit seam and an overzealous submarine hatch. These zippers used rubberized coatings and pressure-locking mechanisms to keep moisture out. making them ideal for diving suits, dry bags, and experimental underwater science fiction costumes that never quite made it past the prototype phase. As for space, well, NASA, bless them, does not trust many things, but they did eventually trust the zipper, albeit with modifications. Early flight suits and pressure garments used custom-engineered fasteners, often combining the zipper's mechanical reliability with hermetic sealing. In one notable instance, a zippered layer was added between two bladder systems to help astronauts pee, without entirely unzipping themselves from existence. It is a matter of record that this worked surprisingly well, though one suspects the trials were damp. The manufacturing techniques required to produce these specialized zippers evolved rapidly. Injection molding entered the stage. Ultrasonic welding techniques allowed plastic teeth to be fused onto polyester tapes. High-frequency testing ensured that each fastener passed not only aesthetic inspection, but performance under tension, heat, and one assumes the psychic weight of knowing it might one day separate a wingsuit from certain death. And still, the zipper was refined. The Vislon zipper, for example, used large plastic teeth designed not just for durability, but for visual presence. It was unapologetic, a zipper that strutted rather than hid, often seen on parkas, outdoor gear, and sleeping bags designed for people who consider frostbite a character-building experience. Every advance, every material, every tiny refinement came with its own unexpected lore. Did you know that early plastic zippers sometimes warped in the sun, causing trousers to appear mildly drunk? Or that the first high-strength industrial zippers were tested by attaching them to sacks of gravel and hurling them from buildings? These tests were documented with all the seriousness of a scientific journal, with phrases like tensile failure under dynamic gravitational influence, which is technical shorthand for the zipper exploded mid-air. What began as a half-forgotten patent by Elias Howe had by the latter half of the 20th century become an empire of interlocking engineering and aesthetic delight. And yet, the zipper's greatest enemy was not fire, nor friction, nor the ceaseless march of progress. It was its own success. Ubiquity is a kind of camouflage, and the zipper, having conquered almost every realm of fastening, faded into our pockets, bags, sleeves, and lives. It became boring, but boring things, as you'll come to understand, are simply things whose drama has become invisible. There are factories in China that produce zippers by the kilometer, machines that hum, whir, clamp, and release with such rhythmic mechanical ecstasy that one begins to suspect the zippers are breeding. And in a way, they are. The modern zipper, unlike its fumbling forebears, is no longer a bespoke contraption, but a mass-produced miracle, stamped and stitched and spooled like the threads of fate themselves, albeit with more plastic and fewer mythological consequences. Let us pause to appreciate the monstrous complexity of this simplicity. Consider, for instance, the die-casting machines used to produce metal zipper teeth. Each tooth is injected into a cavity of microscopic precision, cooled and ejected with the brusque efficiency of a bureaucrat late for lunch. The molds must be replaced every few thousand cycles. Too soon, and productivity suffers. Too late, and you get malformed teeth that lock up like shy lovers. These teeth are then polished, sometimes by tumbling them in rotating drums filled with ceramic pellets and soap, as though trying to exfoliate them into sociability. Then arms, the taping, the teeth, metal or polymer, must be affixed to woven fabric strips, polyester or cotton, depending on intended use, using mechanical precision and adhesive science that would make a chemist sob with envy. For coil zippers, the nylon monofilament must be wrapped, heat set, and stitched into place using specialized machines that operate at speeds so high they could, if startled, achieve self-awareness. For molded plastic zippers, injection nozzles shoot molten resin directly onto the tape, where it cools into a row of obedient, glossy interlocks, like teeth on a very friendly alligator. The slider, meanwhile, is forged in its own arcane ritual, typically made of zinc alloy or high-strength plastic. Its function is so heartbreakingly elegant that it deserves a moment of reverence. The two arms of the slider form a narrow Y-channel. As you pull the tab upward, the arms draw the interlocking sides together with mechanical grace. As you pull downward, the same geometry prizes them apart. It is a choreography of convergence and separation, a bit like marriage, but with fewer arguments and more consistency. To the untrained eye, a zipper factory looks like a place where robotic insects have decided to build a cathedral. Conveyor belts snake through the facility, each bearing half-finished tapes, sliders, or teeth. Heat presses hiss, ultrasonic welders pulse, tension testers yank samples until they scream. Somewhere near the back, a bored technician in safety goggles checks a batch of zippers by zipping and unzipping them several hundred times, like an over-caffeinated monk, performing acts of mechanical devotion. This is not exaggeration. Industry standards require zippers to pass fatigue tests, often involving tens of thousands of zip cycles. A proper zipper must endure at least 5,000 closures without failure. High-performance models, such as those used in mountaineering gear or body bags, may be tested to 20,000 or more. The machines that perform these tests are hypnotic, long arms rhythmically zipping and unzipping to the steady whine of gears, like 1,000 tiny guillotines reconsidering their career choices. The rise of global standards in zipper production further professionalized the field. The ISO 9001 and ASTM D261 guidelines may sound like the serial numbers of lost droids, but they govern everything from tooth spacing and tape tensile strength to slider retention and corrosion resistance. A zipper that fails to meet international standards is not just shoddy, it is practically an insult to global fastening consensus. And then there is the matter of branding. We have already spoken of YKK, the great and silent behemoth of the fastening world, but there are other houses in this game of closes. Riri of Switzerland, known for their luxury zippers that grace haute couture, garments with the quiet snobbery of invisible excellence. There is SBS from China, whose zippers populate the shelves of department stores the world over. And there are the lesser houses, Taiwanese, Turkish, Bangladeshi, each vying for a sliver of the great universal truth that somewhere, someone needs to zip something shut. Yet despite the standardization, each type of zipper serves a distinct domain, like guilds in a medieval fastening economy. Metal zippers, strong, bold, and unmistakably loud, are used in jeans, leather jackets, and bags that seek to intimidate rain and time alike. Coil zippers, with their whisper-smooth action, are the diplomats of the zipper world, fitting into garments, tents, suitcases, and seat covers without so much as a clank. Molded plastic zippers, brightly colored and cheerful, find themselves in children's coats, sleeping bags, and the kind of backpacks that look like cartoon amphibians. There are even specialty zippers, reversible zippers that allow a jacket to be worn inside out, presumably by those who believe in sartorial penance. Two-way zippers with dual sliders for controlled ventilation, or dramatic flare and separating zippers that fully detach, used in coats, hoodies, and magicians' breakaway pants. Of course, every ecosystem has its vulnerabilities. Zippers are not immune to failure. There is the dreaded misalignment when one side starts an inch above the other, resulting in a fastener that zigzags drunkenly across your torso, like a snake trying to recite poetry. There is the infamous zipper split, where the teeth remain zipped, but the fabric parts like the Red Sea, a betrayal that usually occurs during moments of high tension, such as weddings, job interviews, or mid-air turbulence. One of the more esoteric failure modes is slider wear. Over time, the internal channel of the slider erodes from repeated friction, widening just enough to compromise tooth engagement. The result is maddening. The zipper appears to be functioning but refuses to stay shut, like a door that clicks but never latches. Solutions vary. Some recommend crimping the slider with pliers to restore its tension. Others suggest full replacement, a task akin to zipper neurosurgery, requiring tweezers, solemn focus, and an oath not to swear. There are even maintenance rituals passed down in hushed tones from grandmothers and scoutmasters. Rub a graphite pencil along sticky teeth to improve glide. Use candle wax or soap shavings to lubricate sluggish zippers, and if a tooth bends, gently realign it with a needle nose plier, whispering comforting words in case it decides to snap out of spite. And now, a confession. At this point in the tour, visitors often ask, but surely, this is all there is to say. And to them I say, not even close. We have not yet breached the zipper's role in fashion revolutions, nor its symbolic flirtation with indecency and control. We have not examined its appearances in literature, or the strange feud between button loyalists and zipper evangelists. We have not even approached the ecological dilemma posed by a polyester fastener sewn into an otherwise biodegradable coat. But we will. Oh, we will. To speak of the zipper in fashion is to wade into a trench coat of paradoxes. For a device designed to disappear, the zipper has had an uncomfortably loud presence on runways and in dressing rooms, shifting from humble closure to statement piece and back again, as though unsure whether it prefers to be the orchestra or the baton. In the early 20th century, the zipper was still largely utilitarian. Soldiers zipped, mechanics zipped. Small boys zipped their way into overalls with fewer buttons to lose or chew. But in 1937, a rather bold alliance between the French fashion industry and American zipper manufacturers produced a scandalous campaign. The zipper, they claimed, was not merely practical, it was modern. In trousers, it offered speed. In dresses, it offered accessibility. An advertising campaign declared the zipper the newest tailoring idea for men, arguing with startling anatomical confidence that it made trousers more secure and less complicated. Buttons, it was suggested, were the relics of prudish ancestors and should be replaced by something that zipped like progress itself. The zipper thus acquired a strange dual identity. On one hand, it was was clinical, precise, mechanical. On the other, it was suddenly sexy. Designers such as Elsa Schiaparelli embraced the zipper not as a concealed utility, but as a visible, deliberate design element. She placed them on sleeves, across shoulders, and running diagonally across garments, in such a way that one could not help but imagine garments exploding open at the pull of a single tab. And perhaps that was the point. The war years tempered such provocations. Zippers, like nylons and chocolate, became rationed commodities. Yet after 1945, as Western economies soared and consumerism became both pastime and ideology, the zipper reemerged with force. The post-war boom saw millions of garments incorporating zippers, not just in coats and trousers, but in handbags, luggage, boots, gloves, and cosmetic cases. The zipper became the soft hum of modernity. Its sound, zip, was, depending on context, either liberating or ominous. By the 1950s, the zipper was so ubiquitous that it provoked rebellion. The countercultural movement of the 1960s saw a return to buttons, lace-up garments, and drawstrings. To some, zippers represented conformity, mass-produced, impersonal, and faintly militaristic. There were garments that used buttons purely out of spite. In rare cases, entire fashion collections were presented without a single zipper, as if the designers had cast it out like a former lover who was too dependable to be exciting. And yet the zipper always returned. Punk fashion in the 1970s turned it into a weapon, literally and symbolically. Designers like Vivienne Westwood used zippers not to conceal, but to confront. Garments were covered in them, functional or not, as if challenging the observer to find the boundary between opening and defense. A leather jacket with 10 zippers is not merely outerwear. It is a warning. Even haute couture could not resist. Modern fashion houses incorporated zippers as architectural elements. On gowns and cocktail dresses, invisible zippers allowed for seamless silhouettes. On experimental pieces, giant industrial zippers were placed across backs, sleeves, and collars with a kind of ironic machismo, like rivets on a spaceship designed by a tailor with abandonment issues. Somewhere in the midst of this, a great and quiet war continued to rage. The ancient conflict between button and zipper. Buttons, with their roots in antiquity, had tradition on their side. They spoke of craft, detail, and the warm fiddliness of human error. Zippers were the interlopers, new, mechanical, impersonal. One fastened with intention, the other fastened with a zip. The rivalry reached its curious zenith in menswear. For decades, gentlemen's trousers were available in both button-fly and zipper-fly variants. The debates were fierce. Button advocates claimed superior reliability, arguing that a zipper could fail catastrophically, while a button could only fail slowly, with a kind of tragic dignity. Zipper loyalists countered with convenience and speed, key virtues in public restrooms, airports, and other arenas of sartorial urgency. Some men refused to take sides, switching flies according to mood or trousers. Others became evangelists. There are reports, possibly apocryphal, of pub brawls in Yorkshire triggered by fly fastening opinions, though whether these arose from technical disputes or other forms of inebriated ideology remains unclear. Yet despite fashion's periodic tantrums, the zipper maintained a quiet supremacy, not by force, but by frequency. You may declare buttons the height of elegance, but when your suitcase bulges, your your sleeping bag binds, or your tent is flapping in a gale, you pray for a zipper. It is the fastening of necessity. Which brings us to luggage. Zippers revolutionized travel. Prior to their widespread adoption, trunks were secured with clasps, belts, and a faint hope that nothing inside exploded under pressure. The advent of zippered suitcases in the mid-20th century allowed for lighter, more flexible designs. Suddenly, your possessions could be squeezed, compressed, and sealed with a single pull. No knots, no locks, no theatrical buckling. Naturally, this led to new forms of zipper failure. Overstuffed luggage placed unbearable strain on the teeth, resulting in midnight zipper ruptures in foreign hotel lobbies. Emergency maneuvers with safety pins, duct tape, and strategic repacking became the rights of the overambitious traveler. Airports across the globe are still littered with the psychic remains of zippers stretched beyond endurance. Yet zippers evolved. Double coil zippers reinforced their bite. Locking sliders prevented accidental openings. Water-resistant coatings were added to repel rain, sweat, and the occasional burst shampoo bottle. Some manufacturers developed zipper garages, tiny fabric shelters at the end of a track to hide and protect the slider, like a little zipper kennel. In the world of sportswear, zippers gained more features than some smartwatches. Chin guards, wind flaps, auto-lock sliders, asymmetrical placements, all to ensure that a cyclist or climber could zip up mid-motion without catching their beard or dignity in the mechanism. It is no exaggeration to say that the modern outdoor jacket is less clothing than engineered container, and the zipper is its primary interface. Indeed, if one judges an age by its closures, we may live in the zipper epoch. From fashion to function, from provocation to protection, the zipper has remained our silent companion. Zipping skirts, jumpsuits, boots, wallets, gear bags, and compression sacks. Always there, always closing what we open and opening what we dare to close. And still, it is underestimated. Like the butler in a Gothic novel, it is always present, rarely praised, and occasionally responsible for unexplained injuries. We shall now proceed into darker corners of the gallery, where zippers meet ethics, waste, and the great ecological question of whether something that opens should ever truly be thrown away. We arrive now at the question no zipper wishes to hear. What happens after death? For decades, this question was ignored, not out of malice, but because zippers, in their very nature, resist finality. They are closers, not closeds. They fasten, they secure. They give structure to chaos and a sense of permanence to flimsy polyester. But eventually, even the most loyal zipper meets its fate. The split track, the jammed slider, the tooth sheared in a tragic encounter with a washing machine drum. And then, what? The answer is grim. The zipper, as an object, is notoriously difficult to recycle. The modern zipper, particularly in fast fashion, is a fusion of at least 3 distinct materials: the metal or plastic teeth, the synthetic woven tape, and the zinc or alloy slider. These parts are thermally bonded, machine crimped, and in some cases glued into garments like a parasite that refuses to leave even after its host has died. From a recycling perspective, the zipper is a nightmare, a tiny multi-material composite embedded like a ticking time bomb in an otherwise compostable hoodie. In industrial recycling facilities, garments are shredded, fabrics are separated, Fibers are pulped and plastics are reprocessed, but zippers jam the blades. They spark. They resist separation. Often entire loads of textile waste are downgraded, rejected, rebaled, or incinerated because of a handful of stubborn zippers. One might say that zippers are the cockroaches of clothing, durable, ubiquitous, and thoroughly unwelcome in polite decomposition. Efforts have been made to reform this. Some manufacturers, bless their biodegradable hearts, have begun producing zippers made entirely of recycled petty plastics. These zippers, often found in eco-conscious outdoor gear, tout their virtuous lineage on paper tags with earthy fonts. The slider is plastic. The teeth are plastic. The tape is recycled plastic. The only thing not plastic is the promise, which is as green as marketing can make it. There are also compostable zippers made from biopolymers like polylactic acid, PLA, but these remain costly and are often about as strong as a stern word. They function beautifully under light tension, on a pouch for loose lavender, say, but struggle when asked to hold together the ambitions of a modern hiking backpack or the bulge of an airport carry-on. YKK, as always, leads the charge. The company has developed an entire line of environmentally friendly zippers, including Nashalon, made from recycled materials, and Green Rise, made partially from plant-based polymers. These are real products, rigorously tested, compliant with international standards, and accompanied by promotional materials featuring smiling mountaineers who look as though they have never known the pain of a jammed fly. One might almost believe that sustainability is zippable, and yet the reality is more complicated. While the individual zipper may be greener, the system remains stitched together with apathy. The vast majority of clothing still ends up in landfills or is shipped in dubious bales to developing countries, where it often becomes waste again. Few facilities have the infrastructure or the incentive to separate zippers from garments before disposal. It is not unusual for zippers to be melted, crushed, or buried, still perfectly functional, but now entombed in polyester sarcophagi. This, ironically, is a testament to their durability. A properly manufactured zipper can last decades. In fact, some archaeologists of the future may well open ancient suitcases, perfectly zipped, long after the rest of our civilization has turned to mealch. They will study these metal-toothed artifacts and perhaps assume we worshipped some deity of fastening. And they will not be entirely wrong. Repair, of course, is the nobler route. There is a subculture, small, stubborn, and quietly heroic, of people who repair zippers. Tailors, cobblers, gear menders. They carry zipper sliders in tiny drawers, often sorted by width and gauge. They speak in mystic terms. There's 3 coil, and there are 5 Vislon, reverse mount left-hand pull. They replace sliders, align teeth, restitch tapes. Some operate out of back rooms, others in workshops that smell of glue, dust, and faintly of resignation. Their work is delicate. Replacing a zipper in a down jacket, for instance, requires unpicking dozens of seams, removing feathers without launching them into the stratosphere, and reinserting the new zipper without disturbing the jacket's fragile ecosystem. It is needlework for patient gods. And then there are the tinkerers. Online forums abound with advice for DIY zipper repair. Videos titled, "Fix Your Broken Zipper in 30 Seconds," often featuring a person with pliers, optimism, and visibly decreasing confidence. The most common advice: crimp the slider. If it's too loose, squeeze it. Just a bit, not too much. You snapped it. Never mind. Some people use forks to reinsert sliders. Others use fire to fuse fraying tapes. There are those who believe that rubbing a zipper with a graphite pencil can realign its molecules. There are urban legends of a grandmother who once repaired a tent zipper using only a crochet hook and the power of guilt. These stories may not be entirely true, but neither are they entirely false. It is here, in this strange intersection of permanence and impermanence, that the zipper becomes something more than an object. It becomes a metaphor for compromise. We want our closures to be strong, but not unbreakable. We want them to last, but not forever. We want convenience, but not indestructibility. A button can be sewn back on with thread and goodwill. A zipper, once broken, must be rebuilt, and so the zipper remains in limbo, too complex to ignore, too useful to replace, too stubborn to disappear. It is the fastening that haunts the recycling plant, the phantom in the tailoring shop, the unexpected survivor in the afterlife of garments. Our next room will explore the zipper's role in aerospace, high-altitude survival, and the strange demands placed on closure when the atmosphere itself refuses to cooperate. The zipper, having conquered coats, bags, boots, and bourgeois modesty, eventually cast its cold mechanical gaze skyward. After all, it had already sealed tents on Everest and flies on the front lines. The next frontier was obvious: the heavens. In aviation, a zipper isn't decoration, it's defense. At 35,000 feet, failure is not inconvenience, it is crisis. Flight suits for high-altitude pilots depend on zippers that withstand compression, freezing temperatures, and abrupt deceleration. These are not brass novelties. They are tempered alloys, reinforced, rubber-sealed, and zipped with intent. Locking sliders ensure they stay closed, even under pressures that would crumple luggage and crush ego alike. NASA's early spacesuits used zippers for ingress and egress, specialized, pressure-rated closures with the tolerances of nuclear components. They worked mostly, though required considerable choreography from ground crew. By Apollo, designers grew wary. Zippers, though reliable, were too vulnerable. They were supplemented, sometimes replaced, by flaps, Velcro, and redundant layers. Still, zippers lingered in thermal shells, tool pouches, and restraint systems. To this day, astronauts unzip slowly, as if performing surgery with fabric. Commercial aviation hides zippers in plain sight. Flight uniforms, flotation devices, oxygen kits. They snake through airborne protocol like quiet administrators. In survival gear, especially in Arctic or rescue conditions, zippers become exaggerated. Oversized teeth, lighted tabs, mitten-ready loops. They must close even through frost and gloves and panic. Firefighting suits depend on them too. These zippers resist flame, chemicals, pressure, and failure. One does not zip such suits. One enters them as one enters ritual. In 2003, a European manufacturer tested a flame-proof zipper by igniting a suited mannequin to Wagner-ish as a ride of the Valkyries. The zipper passed. The mannequin, it is said, did not object. And then, beneath the sea, the zipper becomes a seal. In dry suits for divers and submariners, it must hold against pressure, cold, and water's desire to occupy every available crevice. Made of rubber or polyurethane, vacuum tested and lubricated with seaweed-scented grease, these zippers must work, because if they fail, the suit floods, or worse, folds. Dry suit owners treat their zippers like relics, cleaned with toothbrushes, stored precisely, and never kinked. From outer space to inner oceans, the zipper holds, not loudly, not proudly, just relentlessly. It closes what must stay closed. And now, as we return to the quiet floor of the museum, we turn not to the stars or depths, but to the cultural realm, where zippers appear in songs, films, and books, often where no fastener was ever expected. Let us now leave the realm of manufacturing tolerances, aerospace sealants, and thermal integrity to explore a stranger territory altogether, culture. For even in the murky waters of human art and storytelling, the zipper has left its peculiar glinting trail, like a metal centipede crawling across the pages of modernity. Its first true cultural blossoming came not through poetry, nor opera, nor noble symphonic overtures, but through trousers, and to be precise, the act of unzipping them. The zipper's sexual symbolism emerged almost immediately after its widespread adoption. It offered not only speed and convenience, but suggestion. Unlike the gradual fumbling of buttons, which lend themselves to narratives of restraint and intent, the zipper offered a single, swift, decisive motion. The zip became the audio equivalent of a wink. It was direct. It was impatient. It did not ask permission. It simply divided. Filmmakers were quick to seize on this. In post-war cinema, the sound of a zipper became a shorthand for intimacy, danger, or, most often, an attempt at both. Sometimes played for laughs, sometimes for drama. It was used not just as sound, but as symbol of exposure, vulnerability, or in some less elegant comedies, uncontainable trousers. Fashion photographers followed suit. In the 1960s and 70s, zippers featured prominently in editorial shoots, undone just slightly, suggestively poised, or blown up to dramatic proportions across hips and backs like industrial spinal cords. Andy Warhol allegedly referred to the zipper as the most honest part of the body, though whether he said this or someone else invented it to sound clever remains unknown and deeply plausible. And then came music. In 1971, the Rolling Stones released their album Sticky Fingers, whose original vinyl featured a working zipper embedded into the cover art. Designed by Andy Warhol and executed by Craig Braun, the album jacket showed a close-up of a man's jeans with an actual physical zipper sewn into the sleeve. It was genius. It was dangerous. It scratched adjacent records in the stack. It was discontinued. It is now a collector AS item and a high watermark in the annals of zipper-based audio packaging. Zippers also crept into the language of punk, where they were synonymous with aggression, rebellion, and disaffection. In the punk wardrobe, zippers were not just fasteners. They were scars, threats, declarations. Jackets bore them like medals. Trousers had extra zippers leading nowhere. Bags had zippers with nothing inside. They mocked utility, or at least pretended to. In truth, the punks loved a good fastening. They just didn't want you to know it. In literature, the zipper has played a more subtle role. It rarely receives center stage, but lurks instead in the margins, unnoticed perhaps, but critical. When a character hears a zipper in a novel, it is never without consequence. The sound implies action, transition, risk. Unzipping is the threshold of vulnerability. Rezipping is recovery, defense, or retreat. Writers use zippers the way pianists use rests, as tiny silences that imply something has just happened or is about to. Occasionally, the zipper plays a central role. In children's books, it often appears in magical clothing, bags that contain infinite toys, coats that hold secret portals. Zippers are trusted gates, mechanisms of control that keep the wild or wonderful just barely contained. They are, quite literally, the edge of narrative magic. In one particularly unhinged self-published science fiction novella from 1982, a sentient zipper gains control of a spacesuit and pilots its wearer through a series of awkward diplomatic missions. The book sold 17 copies, 4 of which were returned. It is, perhaps, the only literary work in which a zipper falls in love. Its climax features the line, "He touched the slider, and she unfastened the stars." It did not win awards. Meanwhile, in comedy, zippers became props. Whoopee cushions may receive more attention, but the fake zipper, often installed in awkward locations on novelty clothing, remains a quiet weapon in the clown-esque arsenal. There are gags built entirely around stuck zippers. There are horror stories of real zippers stuck in real places during very real dates. These stories are repeated at parties, sometimes in courtrooms. One cannot forget their role in horror films either. The slow, deliberate unzipping of a body bag has become a trope unto itself, a moment suspended between dread and inevitability. When you hear a zipper in a morgue scene, you know what's coming. It is the sound of the dead being packaged, of silence being closed. In Japanese cinema, the zipper has enjoyed its own peculiar trajectory. Tokusatsu heroes, those mighty armored figures in rubber suits, often feature elaborate chest zippers, visibly unhidden as if to remind the viewer that even gods of thunder must dress themselves. There's an honesty to this. The zipper is never fully disguised. It says, "I am the threshold between man and myth. Pull me if you dare." In cosplay culture, zippers are both tool and torment. Costume designers speak of zippers with the same tone one might use for radioactive wasps: necessary, dangerous, and difficult to replace. Hidden zippers are the grail, perfectly concealed, perfectly functional, allowing one to don a 10-kilogram foam mech suit and still use the restroom. These designs are shared in secret forums. Tutorials are whispered through YouTube videos titled "Invisible Zip in Lycra Suit," "Life Hack or Madness," and then there is the zipper as joke. In stand-up comedy, the fly zipper, so modest, so constant, has become shorthand for social embarrassment. A zipper left down is funnier than a button left undone. It implies oversight, fallibility, the tragic heroism of a man who prepared for the day and missed just one crucial detail. It is the Greek tragedy of the middle school dance floor. But for all its cultural cameos, the zipper has never demanded attention. It enters the room quietly, performs its role, and leaves. Unlike buttons, which are decorative by nature, or Velcro, which screams the zipper is a supporting actor. It holds up the trousers, secures the gear, conceals the opening, then fades into the fold. It is the opposite of fame. It is function, misunderstood as silence, and yet, if you removed it from our culture entirely, the gap would be audible. Every film, every fashion show, every suspenseful unzip or comedic fly down would sag, unravel, and fall apart. The zipper, in its own humble way, holds us together, narratively, emotionally, sometimes quite literally. Our next room will be darker still. We will examine the zipper and failure, not mechanical failure, but human. When the zipper becomes scandal, when it fails not to open or close, but to conceal what should have remained zipped. In any object long enough ignored, scandal eventually takes root. The zipper, for all its mechanical discretion, is no exception. It was never designed for intrigue. It merely wished to close things quietly and without fuss. But alas, human beings are incapable of using anything quietly or without fuss. And so the zipper, that modest metallic centipede, has become, repeatedly, spectacularly, a conspirator in scandal. It has split open in the wrong moment. It has refused to close under pressure. It has exposed what was meant to remain unexposed, and it has done so, often in front of cameras. Let us begin with politics, the stage upon which all dignity eventually unzips. In 1988, the new as Vice President George H.W. Bush was photographed exiting Air Force Two, with his fly visibly undone. The resulting image was splashed across newspapers with the sort of glee usually reserved for meteorological disasters or rare zoo births. Pundits made predictable jokes. Editorial cartoons were drawn. The fly was metaphorized. One columnist suggested it represented the gap between policy and public trust. Another called it an honest mistake, frankly refreshing in its accessibility. But the zipper's most enduring entanglement in scandal belongs to Bill Clinton, whose presidency will forever be zippered to the phrase, improper relationship. Here, the zipper was not the weapon, but the battlefield, a silent, inert, metallic frame through which the moral panic of the late 1990s was projected. Tabloids zoomed, allegations mounted. One particular anecdote involving a misaligned fly became courtroom testimony never before in the history of fastening had a zipper been examined so thoroughly by so many lawyers. In the world of celebrity, too, the zipper has failed. Red carpet wardrobes are built on hope and tiny strips of teeth. Occasionally, hope loses. Countless fashion disasters have occurred because a back zipper refused to budge, or because a side zipper slowly migrated south during an interview. Most of these incidents are managed discreetly by assistants armed with safety pins and spiritual resolve. Some, however, make it to YouTube. One famous example involved a pop star whose jumpsuit zipper burst mid-performance, prompting a backup dancer to heroically press her hands against the failing seam while attempting to keep rhythm. It is in these moments that the zipper transcends its role. It becomes dramatic tension, literal tension, and its failure becomes a metaphor for all that cannot be controlled. Fame, exposure, flesh, fortune. Fashion designers, of course, exploit this. There are garments where the zipper is not meant to conceal, but to hint, to suggest, even to provoke. Corset dresses with frontal zippers, blazers with zippers at the clavicle, trousers that unzip from the ankle upward in a gesture that can only be described as daringly impractical. These garments are not meant for movement. They are meant for posing. Sculptures with fastening mechanisms that, if used, would result in a scandal of creased fabric and exposed underlayers. There is also the domain of performance art, where the zipper becomes more than merely provocative. In several installations of the early 2000s, some funded perplexingly by serious European cultural grants, artists created giant zipper sculptures that visitors could walk through, One such installation, titled The Soft Divide, featured a 15-meter-long zipper sewn into a canvas tunnel. Visitors were invited to zip and unzip the structure from within, metaphorically exploring boundaries between skin, garment, and architecture. One critic called it a powerful commentary on human vulnerability. Another called it a tent with ideas above its station. Elsewhere, zippers have been embroidered into legal history, not as crimes in themselves, but as accomplices. In one particularly curious theft case in 1996, a burglar was identified solely by the unique broken zipper on his windbreaker, which snagged on a splinter during the break-in. Forensic experts matched the cloth and tooth pattern with his jacket. He was convicted. The zipper, though silent, had testified. And then there are the everyday scandals, the ones not reported, but remembered. A job interview in which the applicant's fly was open. A best man at a wedding whose zipper failed just before his speech. The yoga instructor whose sports bra zipper gave out mid-pose. These are the private humiliations, the micro-tragedies. Their only audience, whoever happened to be looking in the wrong moment. We must also discuss school children, for whom the zipper is often an early adversary. Little hands struggle to align the teeth, yank the slider, or thread the tab into its tiny plastic receiver. Many a tear has been shed on the kindergarten coat rack. There are theories, unproven but persistent, that childhood zipper frustration builds character, that those who learn to zip under duress become better adults. This is difficult to test ethically, but remains a popular belief among grandparents and manufacturers of mittens with built-in clips. Finally, there is the modern zipper scandal, the digital one. On video calls, with laptops perched awkwardly and cameras angled skyward, countless professionals have forgotten the simple pre-meeting ritual of the zipper check. There are viral clips. There are screenshots. There are careers with small, jagged zipper-shaped dents. The zipper in all these stories is never the villain. It is not malicious. It merely fails. And in that failure, it reminds us that no matter how sleek the garment, how practiced the speech, or how powerful the person, everything is held together by tiny interlocking teeth that can, at any moment, part. In our next chamber, we shall return to calmer matters, the science of sound. For the zipper, in addition to fastening and unfastening, has a voice, and that voice has been recorded, analyzed, mimicked, censored, and fetishized in more places than you might expect. There is, if you listen closely, a peculiar kind of music in the zipper, a short glissando, a mechanical whisper, a serrated sigh. It is the sound of fastening, of sealing, of deciding. It is also, strangely, the sound of memory. You have heard this sound thousands of times. You have heard it in dressing rooms, locker rooms, airport bathrooms, tent flaps at dawn, and winter mornings in front of the coat rack. You have heard it in silence and over chaos. You have zipped quietly to avoid waking someone. You have unzipped with the sudden violence of panic or need or hurry. And always, zip, there it is, a small controlled rupture in the acoustic fabric of your life. Acousticians, those noble priests of waveforms and vibration, have studied this sound. Not obsessively, you understand. Not like they study jet engines or the mysteries of whale song, but enough to give it a profile. The classic zipper noise consists of a sharp onset, a broadband spectral burst peaking in the mid-range frequencies, and a rapid decay. It is not dissimilar to tearing paper, but with a regular rhythmic signature caused by the sequential engagement of teeth. The speed of pull, the material of the teeth, and the tension in the tape all affect the sound. Metal zippers are louder, of course. They rattle slightly, they click. Plastic molded zippers are smoother, more bass-toned. Nylon coil zippers have a faint hiss, like a polite snake. Waterproof zippers, especially those with rubber coatings, often sound like someone trying to separate Velcro while underwater. The sound changes depending on your mood, or rather, on how quickly and forcefully you pull. A calm zip says, "I am getting dressed." A frantic zip says, "I am late." A slow, stealthy zip says, "I am sneaking out. I am stealing snacks." Or, "This tent is not as empty as I had hoped." Sound designers in film and video games have long been aware of this. The zip is used not just to represent clothing, but to signal transitions. It says, "We are now closing off. We are now about to act." In horror films, an unzipping sound may cue the discovery of a body. In romantic comedies, it may signal a much livelier kind of discovery. In heist movies, it's often used for gear bags. Crucial, confident, clipped. In cartoons, exaggerated zips are used for comedic undressing, sudden escapes, or the unexplained inflation of characters into balloons. The zip is so recognizable that it has been digitally replicated countless times. Foley artists often keep a selection of zipper samples categorized by length, pitch, and drama. Some studios maintain dedicated zipper libraries, carefully recorded tracks of various zips, tagged with descriptions like tent flap, fast, hoodie, hesitant, or military duffel, aggressive. These are played back, slowed down, layered, or looped, depending on context. Some high-end games even simulate zipper mechanics in real time. If you've ever changed gear in a modern RPG and heard a zip before your armor loaded, you've heard the work of a man in a sound booth, zipping a backpack in 12 different ways. There are also people, though we must tread carefully here, who find the sound of a zipper soothing. ASMR creators have produced entire videos of gentle zipper noises, zipping and unzipping repeatedly, whispering about jackets, pencil cases, and raincoats. These sounds, oddly, are often paired with soft talking and simulated care. Let me zip that up for you. I'll pack this gently now. The zipper becomes a part of a nurturing ritual. Not fastening, but comfort. And then, of course, there is the opposite camp. Those who fear the sound. For some, the zip has become a kind of auditory trauma. It may recall cold gym locker rooms, medical gowns, or unfortunate encounters with stubborn flies. There is even a short-lived subgenre of prank videos designed to mimic the sound of a zipper in a silent office, just to cause panic. The joke, one assumes, is the fear that your own fly might be open. The laughter, if any, is nervous. In censorship, the zipper has become a cheeky stand-in. In animations or comic books, rather than showing nudity, a character's clothes might zip off in a puff of stylized modesty, the sound doing all the implication. A well-placed zip in audio can signal redaction, hesitation, or replacement. He told me to go zip myself. The word functions both as verb and euphemism, a mechanical bleep with attitude. We must not ignore the experimental musicians. Those brave souls who look at household objects and think, "You shall become art." In 1974, a German avant-garde collective recorded a piece called Zippen Symphony, composed entirely of recorded zipper noises, amplified and arranged across 4 channels. It premiered in a disused warehouse. 17 people attended. One reviewer called it an anxious exploration of intimacy and closure. Another simply wrote, "I miss music," and yet the zipper sound continues to resonate. It is brief. It is specific. It is unmistakable. A single zip can suggest opening, closing, revealing, hiding, escaping, dressing, undressing, packing, stealing, preparing, relaxing, panicking, or moving on. No other sound does so much with so little. It is no coincidence that our language, too, has absorbed this noise. To zip it means to be quiet. To zip through is to move quickly. To be zipped up is to be secure, sealed, done. Even in slang, zip has been used to describe energy, speed, nothingness, and silence, an entire semantic field defined by a fastening sound. The zipper, in short, is an acoustic punctuation mark, small, sharp, final, and unlike the button, which clicks quietly, almost apologetically, the zipper demands to be heard. It arrives with a voice, a metallic consonant, a brief percussion, and then nothing. The garment is closed, the moment is past. Our next haul shall explore the zipper's symbolic afterlife, its metaphors in psychology, language, and moral philosophy, what it means to close, to seal, to hide, or to bind, and whether a zipper is ever truly neutral in the stories we tell ourselves. There are objects we use, and then there are objects that use us. The zipper, curiously, belongs to both categories. It holds, it fastens, it obeys, but it also defines, conceals, decides. In its small mechanical gesture, we see the echo of human intentions: control, modesty, secrecy, restraint, which is why, when it appears in metaphor, it rarely does so quietly. To zip something up is to end discussion. It is the final word, not in argument, but in logistics, in emotional containment. He zipped up his feelings. She zipped her coat and walked out. The motion is precise, linear, irrevocable. It draws a line, a sealed line. One cannot half-zip a thought, not metaphorically. Once zipped, the subject is closed. In psychological language, the zipper frequently stands for repression. It binds things in: thoughts, emotions, memories. A zipped mouth implies silence, not the peace of agreement, but the pressure of something unsaid. It is a form of self-muting. A zipped jacket suggests protection from cold, from exposure, from vulnerability. But protection is a polite word. The truth is, it's a wall with teeth. Therapists, some at least, have used zipper imagery in dream analysis. Dreams of unzipping are sometimes interpreted as release, from constraint, from identity, from fear. A dream of a zipper that won't close may represent anxiety, exposure, the failure to contain oneself. Freud, had he lived long enough to witness the popularity of the zipper, would no doubt have declared it a perfect metaphor for civilized suppression, both phallic in function and symbolic in its ambiguous, reversible power dynamic. In fact, one of the more curious aspects of the zipper is its bidirectionality. Unlike a button, which closes one way and must be reversed entirely, the zipper can be opened or closed from either end, if designed that way. The two-way zipper, found in coats, tents, and sleeping bags, allows not just adjustment, but negotiation. It is a symbol of compromise. One zips up for warmth, but may unzip slightly for relief. One closes a bag, but leaves an opening for access. The zipper does not enforce totality. It allows calibrated security. It is the mechanical expression of ambivalence. In moral philosophy, particularly in metaphor-laden 20th century essays, the zipper has appeared as shorthand for boundaries. The zipped life is structured, orderly, safe, but also restrictive, limiting, blind to complexity. The unzipped life, by contrast, is open, exposed, experimental, and vulnerable. To unzip, as some authors have written, is to permit entropy. The line, poetic as it sounds, is perhaps more accurate than it intended. There are even arguments, some absurd but sincere, that zippers reinforce capitalist values. They are mass-produced, impersonal, industrial closures. They separate the body from the world with efficiency and anonymity. A button may be sewn with care, chosen for style, adorned with detail. A zipper simply is. It closes because that is what it does. It is not decorative. It is decisive. In this reading, the zipper becomes a tool of the late industrial self. Efficient, quiet, unfeeling. Clothing theorists, yes, they exist, have long debated the zipper's role in garment psychology. Unlike laces or ties, which are performative and tactile, or buttons, which require individual attention, the zipper performs a single, continuous gesture. This gesture flattens complexity. One motion, one sound, closure achieved. It is a moment of transformation before one is open, after one is enclosed. No negotiation, no slow revelation, just the zip, and now you are someone else. In this way, the zipper has become a symbol of costume, disguise, role play. Superheroes change identities with a zipper. Secret agents escape constraints with a zipper. Children become astronauts, tigers, witches, and robots by stepping into suits and zipping up. The zipper marks the boundary between play and reality, self and other, civilian and hero. Even in subcultures, the zipper holds semiotic power. In fetish fashion, zippers are often exaggerated, larger, shinier, more numerous than function requires. They speak to access, control, restriction, exposure. The sound of a slow zipper in such contexts is not about clothing at all. It is about permission, about suspense, about the mechanical ritual of transformation. Zippers have also been used in protest. In one memorable performance piece during a civil rights demonstration, a protester wore a jacket entirely covered in zippers, each one labeled with a freedom denied: speech, assembly, travel, employment. At the climax of the performance, she unzipped every one, revealing a plain white tunic beneath. The symbolism was not subtle, but neither was it forgettable. And we must not ignore the spiritual implications, however lightly. Some religious garments have rejected zippers outright, favoring buttons, ties, or simple draping. The zipper is seen in these circles as too modern, too impersonal, too aggressive. Closure should take time, they argue. Dressing should be an act, not a function. The zipper, they claim, bypasses intention. It enables haste. It allows entry and exit too quickly. There is, they suggest, a spiritual danger in convenience. In all these things, the zipper is not just a tool, but a metaphor, a quiet one that does not announce itself, but waits in seams, edges, transitions. You do not often see the zipper in a scene, but you sense its presence. The moment someone reaches for the tab, something is about to change. It is an instrument of concealment and revelation. It is the line we draw between public and private, between readiness and restraint, between inside and out. It holds more than fabric. It holds the shape of modern life. And next, dear visitor, we step into the invisible, the zipperless revolution, because for all the zipper has achieved, there are those who wish to live without it, and they are gaining ground. If every empire eventually inspires its rebellion, then the zipper, ubiquitous, mechanical, overqualified, has met its own resistance. A quiet movement without slogans or banners, but with Velcro, magnets, hidden snaps, and the steady ambition of life lived without teeth. The zipperless revolution did not begin with drama. It began, as most revolutions do, in the margins. Adaptive clothing designers, those who create garments for people with limited dexterity, were among the first to challenge the zipper SS supremacy. For those suffering from arthritis, paralysis, or neurological conditions, the standard zipper presented a daily trial. The steady threading, the alignment of teeth, the grip required to pull. Zippers that jammed, caught, or misaligned were not minor inconveniences. They were barriers, and so designers searched for alternatives. Magnets emerged as an elegant solution. Integrated into jacket fronts and fly closures, magnetic fasteners offered a whisper-soft seal. No pulling, no aligning, just contact, click, and closed. The magnets were often hidden, sewn into padded seams or lined with soft flaps. They looked like zippers, but they were not. They were frictionless, toothless, rebellious. Velcro, too, had its moment, though its social acceptance remains limited. While functionally impressive, Velcro is loud. It screams, it rips, it tears at silence like a cat through wallpaper. It is decisive, yes, but rarely discreet. You cannot sneak out of a room wearing Velcro. You cannot remove Velcro gloves during a wedding ceremony without drawing attention. The military, paradoxically, both loves and loathes it. Tactical vests are covered in Velcro patches, yet soldiers complain that opening a Velcro pocket sounds like a small explosion in an echo chamber. There is also the humble snap button, small, metallic, and satisfying. Snap-fastened clothing had a brief renaissance in the 1990s, when tearaway pants were marketed to athletes and boy bands alike. The trousers could be removed in a single theatrical motion, snap, 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 and were usually worn over shorts, leggings, or in at least one regrettable commercial, nothing at all. Their practicality was questionable. Their symbolism, freedom, ease, controlled chaos, was not. In recent years, the zipperless ideal has gained new followers. Minimalists. These are people who view the zipper not just as outdated, but excessive. A relic of over-engineering. Why, they ask, should the human body require an industrial closure just to wear a hoodie? Why should a couch pillow need a miniature rack of metal teeth? These are not Luddites. They are connoisseurs of simplicity. They prefer pullovers, elastic waists, overlapping seams. If it must fasten, let it fasten softly. Children's clothing has also joined the revolution. Zippers, once favored for speed and security, are now seen by some parents as hazards, prone to pinching, jamming, or sudden failure during tantrums. Baby wear with magnetic closures has become a niche luxury. Garments that close with a gentle click rather than a shriek. One brand describing their magnet-based baby onesie, referred to it as the garment equivalent of a lullaby. The child, one assumes, has no opinion. Even in outerwear, long the fortress of zippers, designers have begun to experiment. Parkas with double-breasted closures, wrapped jackets with internal tie cords, pullover rain shells with asymmetric panels and waterproof gussets. These are not garments of mass utility. They are garments with an agenda. They reject the fast, universal, symmetrical logic of the zipper. They whisper, there are other ways to be closed. Of course, the zipper industry has not sat idly by. There have been countermeasures, soft touch sliders, magnetic alignment zippers that self-thread, silent close models designed to compete with Velcro in stealth applications. The war is not open, but it is real. Each new fastener must ask the same question: why not a zipper? And sometimes there is no answer. The most radical part of the zipperless movement, however, lies not in the design, but in the philosophy. At its heart is the belief that closure is not always necessary, that the human body does not always need to be sealed into symmetry, that convenience is not the highest virtue. There are garments, loose, draped, layered, that require no fastening at all. They are worn, not secured. They flow, they adjust, they breathe. These garments have ancient lineage: the kimono, the toga, the sari, the chiton. Civilizations clothed themselves for millennia without zippers. They used knots, brooches, belts, and gravity. The zipper, in this context, is a historical blip, a 20th century addiction to linearity. We wanted to close things quickly. We wanted to move faster. We wanted to press things flat. And now, perhaps, we are returning. Fashion historians have taken note. They chart the decline of visible zippers in couture, the rise of concealed closures, the emphasis on soft structure. They speak of the post-fastening era, as if we are entering a time when garments will adjust themselves to us, rather than the reverse. They may be wrong. They usually are. But the zipper's aura has shifted. What was once modern is now mechanical. That does not mean it is obsolete. Far from it. But it no longer reigns unchallenged. Even in popular media, this shift is evident. Where once a hero zipped their jacket before a showdown, now they pull on a cloak. Where once a romance climaxed with the unzipping of a dress, now it is a slow unraveling of tied straps. The change is subtle, but it is happening. And yet, for all their poetry, for all their silence, none of these alternatives offer quite the same moment. The zipper has rhythm. It has sound. It has finality. It is the audible click of preparedness. It is the line drawn. Every replacement, no matter how elegant, lacks that small declaration. But the world does not always want declarations. Sometimes it wants softness. Sometimes it wants something that cannot jam. And so the zipperless age advances, not to replace, but to remind that even the most universal tool may not be for everyone, that every closure must eventually be questioned. Next, we'll walk deeper still into the realm of obsession, collectors, archivists, specialists, and the quiet international cult of people who dedicate their lives to cataloging, restoring, and even loving zippers. There are people, quiet, precise, unshakably earnest, who collect zippers. This may seem unlikely. It may even seem unwell, but it is true. Somewhere, right now, in a converted garage in suburban Kyoto, or a basement in Wisconsin, A human being is cataloging metal teeth with the same reverence another might give to rare stamps, pressed butterflies, or antiquarian books. These individuals are not joking. Their zippers are sorted by decade, material, manufacturer. Their drawers are labeled. Their sliders are polished. They can tell you the difference between a 1938 Talon and a 1942 Conmar by the angle of the pull tab alone. Some collect only pre-war American zippers. Others focus on YKK variants across global markets. There is a man in Finland who specializes in zippers, used exclusively in ski jackets between 1959 and 1974. His name, mercifully, has not yet entered the annals of public shame. The collecting of zippers falls into a strange taxonomic gray zone. Unlike coins or clocks, zippers are rarely signed. Their marks are tiny, often hidden. Some are embossed with initials YKK, Riri, Talon, Opti, Lampo, and others, each a quiet empire, once sovereign, now mostly absorbed. Collectors use magnifying lenses, light boxes, and forensic cameras to examine these details. There are online forums, there are conventions, there are mailing lists where grown adults trade photos of jacket linings with the breathless tone of ornithologists spotting a rare crest. Many of these collectors are restorers. They believe sincerely that the zipper is an endangered species, not in existence, but in appreciation. Vintage luggage, military garments, and early sportswear often arrive in tatters, with the zipper as the first casualty. These restorers remove the offending relic with a scalpel's care stitch in period-accurate replacements and recondition the original slider using fine grit paper, polishing cloths, and a homemade lubricant whose ingredients include graphite beeswax, and in one case, patience brewed into a tea. Some go further. They recreate lost zippers from scratch. Using small batch die-cut molds and looms, they produce reproduction zippers accurate to within fractions of a millimeter. These items are not sold. They are archived, tucked into parchment envelopes, indexed, protected from UV light and humidity. Their value is not economic, it is devotional. And then there are the museums. Small, specialized, lovingly underfunded. The YKK Fastening Exhibition Center in Kurobe, Japan, is one such place. Its exhibits include zipper prototypes, historical garments, cross-sections of industrial dyes, and an interactive machine that allows visitors to assemble a zipper from scratch. Guides speak of Tadao Yoshida with the tone normally reserved for saints or engineers. School children on field trips wander past walls of sliders like initiates in a fastening cult. Another notable archive exists in Germany, a private collection rumored to contain over 17,000 individual zippers, some dating back to the Judson era, including an original security fastener with intact patent ribbon. The collector refuses interviews. A friend once described him cryptically as a man of many closures, but not all obsession wears a tie. In the darker corners of the internet, the zipper is fetishized. There are videos, millions of them, featuring the unzipping of garments, often slowly, often without further action. The sound, the anticipation, the implication, these are the appeal. Entire websites are dedicated to high-resolution recordings of zippers being opened and closed. One channel, now defunct, featured nothing but hand-zipping pencil cases with escalating dramatic lighting. The comment sections were engaged. Fashion brands have capitalized. Some market jackets with over 50 zippers, most of them decorative, some of them fake, all of them placed for effect. There are skirts that unzip into trousers. There are trousers that unzip into shame. There are garments with zippers leading nowhere, looping back into themselves like fastening Mobius strips. Aesthetically pointless, but emotionally charged. In film and television production, there are zipper consultants. These are not always full-time roles, but when period accuracy is required, say a 1940s biopic or a 1960s fashion drama, a consultant may be brought in to ensure that no anachronistic zippers appear. A 1955 jacket should not feature a post-1970 YKK coil. A 1930s dress should close with a side seam talon, not a center back opti. These details matter, not to the plot, not to the casual viewer, but to someone, and that someone will email. The industry has responded. Specialty shops now carry dead stock zippers, unused vintage stock from defunct factories. These are sold by the piece, with listings like NOS Talon 42 brace, USA, pre-1963, Type C puller, mint condition. They are expensive. They are hoarded. They are sometimes displayed in shadow boxes, beneath labels printed in Helvetica or despair. What drives this depth of obsession? Perhaps it is the tension between invisibility and detail. The zipper is not meant to be noticed. It disappears into seams, shadows, linings. To obsess over it is to defy that invisibility. It is to insist that even the small, the unnoticed, the merely functional deserves reverence. Or perhaps it is simply a mechanical love, a recognition that these rows of teeth, minuscule, interlocked, precise, represent a perfection that few things achieve. When a zipper works well, it does so completely. When it fails, it does so dramatically. It is a device of totality. You do not half zip your heart. And so the collectors collect, the restorers restore, the archivists preserve, the fetishists unzip, and the rest of the world, well, we fasten our coats and move on, unaware that behind every zip there is somewhere a man with tweezers, waiting to label the sound. In our next gallery, we approach the beginning of the end, the decline of innovation. For while the zipper has not disappeared, its age of invention may be behind us. There comes a moment in the life of every great invention when it stops evolving and starts repeating itself. The wheel did it. The spoon did it. The door hinge certainly did it. And now, in the quieter corners of textile engineering, so too has the zipper. We are, it seems, at the end of its golden age. It is not that zippers have disappeared. On the contrary, they are more numerous than ever. Billions produce annually, more than humans, more than spoons, more than moral certainties. But they have reached a point of saturation. There is little left to improve. Every problem has been solved. Every major flaw accounted for. We are no longer innovating. We are iterating. Consider the trajectory, from Howe's primitive closure to Judson's commercial failure, from Sunback's interlocking teeth to nylon coils and waterproof Vislon zippers. The 20th century was alive with zipper progress. New machines, new materials, new geometries. Each decade brought refinements. Tapes became stronger. Sliders became smoother. Teeth became lighter, smaller, quieter, smarter. But what has changed truly since the 1990s? The answer: coatings. Slightly better coatings. Flame retardant, UV resistant, antibacterial. There are zippers now impregnated with silver ions to kill bacteria. Zippers that resist mold. Zippers that reflect heat. There are sliders made with carbon fiber, pull tabs shaped like little skulls. But these are surface changes, decorative variations, cosmetic evolutions on a species that has long since completed its Darwinian sprint. We have entered what historians of technology politely call the plateau phase. Engineers still work on zippers, of course. Papers are published. Patents are filed. But they are subtle, quiet. A recent breakthrough involved a slider that adjusts its own tension based on pull angle. Undeniably clever, but unlikely to provoke a parade. Another lab developed a zipper that emits a faint tactile vibration when fully closed, theoretically useful for visually impaired users. The zipper now hums softly when it has done its job. One must applaud the courtesy. Even YKK, giant among closers, has shifted focus. Where once they heralded revolutions in fastening, now they advertise their sustainability credentials, their integrated manufacturing systems, their zipper factory robot arms with charmingly human names. Their newest slogan is "Little parts, big difference." It is elegant. It is vague. It is unmistakably post-innovation marketing. The truth is, the zipper works. It works astonishingly well. It closes quickly, securely, reversibly. It is cheap, durable, machine washable, easily replaced, endlessly manufacturable. It is not broken, and so no one is fixing it. This creates a curious tension. In most industries, innovation is driven by necessity. But the zipper has no serious competitors. Velcro has its applications, magnets its niches, buttons their loyalists. But for strength, simplicity, and cost, the zipper still reigns. It is the tyrant of tensile closure. And yet, like all empires grown old, it has nothing left to conquer. Designers, of course, still play with it. Fashion invents new zipper aesthetics. Zippers that curve, that branch, that run diagonally across garments like ornamental scars. There are zippers shaped like lightning bolts, zippers hidden behind pleats. There was a brief, disastrous attempt at scented zippers in 2007. They smelled faintly of citrus and guilt. The idea died quietly. Tech companies have flirted with the zipper. A few years ago, a startup proposed a smart zipper for athletic jackets, equipped with sensors that detected body temperature and unzipped accordingly. It failed, not because the technology didn't work, but because users found it disturbing. There is something unsettling about a garment that opens itself. The zipper, it turns out, must remain obedient. Other attempts at integration have fared little better. A Canadian firm designed a jacket with a built-in charging cable hidden in the zipper tape. Clever, but difficult to wash. Another brand developed a parka with a zipper that also served as an RFID scanner, intended for warehouse employees. It was briefly popular among technophiles who enjoy being scanned by doors, but none of these caught on. They were novelties, accessories pretending to be revolutions. The real revolution, if there is one, lies not in the zipper itself, but in its absence. As discussed in our last haul, zipperless garments are on the rise. Adaptive wear, minimalist fashion, costume design, avant-garde clothing, all are asking a quiet question: must we zip at all? And yet, we do. Because the zipper is not a trend. It is not a style. It is infrastructure. It is there, silently, everywhere. In boots and bags, pockets and pouches, wallets and wetsuits. It is a closure that disappears into function. It does not announce itself unless it fails. It is the plumbing of clothing, the wiring of bags, the architecture of opening. So what does a museum do when the object it curates has nothing left to become? When the innovation has slowed to a crawl and the future looks like more of the same? It documents, it preserves, it polishes brass teeth under archival glass. It labels pull tabs and dates manufacturing runs. It tells stories, and it waits, because stagnation, after all, is not death. It is stability. And in the world of mechanical closure, that may be the highest praise one can give. But we are not yet finished. We now step into the most philosophical wing of our exhibit, where we ask not what the zipper is, or was, or might still become, but what it means. Let us begin with a thought. Perhaps the zipper is not a fastening device at all. Perhaps it is a boundary ritual, a hinge between states, an engineered metaphor so precise, so mechanically exact, that it ceased to be noticed, not because it failed to mean something, but because it succeeded too completely. A zipper closes. Yes. But what does it close? Not just jackets and bags, surely. Not just tents, boots, flies, and pockets. No. It closes moments, decisions, identities. One is open, then closed. One is vulnerable, then secure. One is dressed. One is prepared. One is leaving. The gesture is brief but significant. Hands reach down, find the tab, and pull. Zip. You have made a choice. You are no longer what you were a second ago. You are contained, armored, framed, ready. In this light, the zipper is less a tool than a threshold. We speak of zipping up before an event, an interview, a funeral, a confrontation. It is a mechanical transformation. We seal the soft and expose the steel. The act is almost liturgical. Children learn it early. Zip your coat before you go out. Zip your bag before you leave. Zipping becomes a prelude to entering the world, a symbolic handshake with civilization. But there is another side, because what zips up can also unzip. Unzipping is a release, a regression, a return. When the day is done, we unzip. We shed uniform, tension, posture. We exhale through our sleeves. The zipper becomes not an exit, but a way back in, to comfort, to privacy, to the ragged shape beneath the formal silhouette. We zip up to become what the world demands. We unzip to become what we are. This duality, the reversible, audible transformation, is why the zipper holds such mythic potential. It is Janus faced, looking both ways at once. The same slider that closes can also undo. It is not like a lock, or a seal, or a knot. Those are one-way devices. The zipper is dialectical. It affirms and denies. It secures and permits, which is why perhaps it haunts our subconscious so thoroughly. Why we dream of zippers, stuck, vanishing, endless. Why horror films use zippers to open body bags, or worse, people. Why sex comedies begin with a zipper. Why toddlers laugh and panic as they learn to manipulate one. Why the sound itself, zip, is so culturally charged, so immediate, so strangely intimate. It's not the material that matters. Not the brass or nylon. Not the slider design or coil tension. It's the line, the artificial seam that says, there's a before and after. This is open. This is closed. You may not pass. And so, the zipper becomes a kind of border, not geopolitical, not legal, but emotional, personal. Every zipper is a fence with a gate. We wear them across our chests, over our hearts, between our legs. They touch places we protect. They live in clothing that transforms. School uniforms, military jackets, wedding dresses, workwear. You unzip one roll and zip into another. Some psychologists have gone further, arguing, perhaps too enthusiastically, that the zipper is our modern equivalent of the medieval clasp or the tribal mask, a socially acceptable moment of transformation. Not dramatic, not theatrical, but no less powerful. The commuter zips his coat and becomes anonymous. The nurse zips her scrubs and becomes capable. The child zips their backpack and becomes, however reluctantly, a student. Each zip is an acceptance of narrative. Even the failures, the stuck slider, the split teeth, are symbolically resonant. They mark liminality gone wrong, a refusal to fully cross, a reminder that we are not machines, that even closure can falter. Consider, too, the metaphysical tension between visibility and concealment. A zipper is often hidden, but not always. Some are proudly displayed, bold, industrial, metallic stripes across garments that shout structure. Others are buried beneath fabric, meant to disappear. This variation becomes expressive. A visible zipper says, "This garment has structure, and I control it." A hidden one says, "This garment simply is." Zippers frame intention, and in this we see the deeper truth. The zipper is narrative control. When we zip, we define a beginning and an end. We edit the body. We select what is shown and what is sealed. The unzipped tent becomes an invitation. The zipped suitcase becomes a boundary. The zipped jacket becomes a statement. The unzipped fly becomes, well, a moment of concern. In modern philosophy, at least among those suspicious of categories, the zipper becomes allegorical. It joins the ranks of doors, mirrors, staircases. It is not quite metaphor, not quite object. It is process. It is transition. Neither button nor lock, neither clasp nor seam, but something in between. And perhaps that's what makes it truly boring. Not because it lacks meaning, but because it has too much, too evenly distributed, too smooth. It functions too well to provoke drama, and yet it is everywhere. A structure so universal, we've ceased to see it, even as we pass through it every day. This is the gift of boring things. They carry meaning precisely because we don't notice them. They form the unspoken architecture of experience. They hold us together while we imagine we are held by larger, grander things. In our next and penultimate haul, we consider what happens when the zipper is used not just practically or symbolically, but artistically. When it becomes material, medium, message. The zipper, despite its utilitarian origins, has found its way into galleries. Not often, not loudly, but with a persistence that mirrors its industrial self. It appears not as a symbol, nor as background texture, but as medium. A thing that does not merely fasten fabric, but fastens thought. The artist does not ask, what can the zipper do? But what does the zipper mean when it is not doing? The earliest uses were instinctive. Found object artists of the 1960s and 70s began incorporating zippers into collage and sculpture, not as fetish or novelty, but as cultural residue, cast-offs from garments, mass-produced bits of metal and tape, reassembled into abstract compositions. They were not meant to zip. They were meant to signify something had once been sealed, or perhaps should have been. Later came textile artists, those hybrid figures straddling fashion and form, who embedded zippers into fabric installations in such quantity and scale that they ceased to function individually and became texture. Vast panels of zipped seams, stitched in geometric patterns, filled entire walls. Viewers were encouraged to touch, unzip, rearrange. The installation became an instrument, the audience complicit in its mutability. The zipper became agency. In one such piece, Closure Study Number 5, exhibited in Krakow in 2004, a 12-meter fabric tunnel hung from the ceiling, its entire interior lined with zippers of different sizes, origins, and eras. Visitors walked through, the faint zip and zip of brushing bodies creating an ambient soundtrack. Some stopped to unzip parts of the wall. Some zipped them back. One woman spent 17 minutes closing and opening a single Austrian ski jacket zipper from 1972. She left smiling, though no one could say why. Another artist, based in Berlin, created what she called garment ghosts, translucent coats made of mesh and nylon, stitched entirely with zippers. No thread, every seam zipped into the next. The pieces were unwearable, fragile, half garment, half skeleton. Their fragility was intentional. If you unzipped the wrong section, the whole coat collapsed. It was not a jacket. It was a proposition. Sculptors, too, have taken up the zipper. In 2011, an artist in Montreal built a full-scale couch with a functioning zipper along its center seam. It could be split into 2 chairs, then zipped back together. The metaphor was obvious. Connection, separation, duality, but also surprisingly functional. The piece was titled Zipline. It was purchased by a couple who later divorced. The chairs remained separate. But perhaps the most ambitious use of the zipper in contemporary art occurred in 2017 in a performance piece entitled Disclosure. A dancer dressed in a custom bodysuit stitched with 152 functional zippers performed a slow, choreographed unzipping, each movement revealing, concealing, transforming. Arms became wings, a back flap became a face. The torso unzipped into a pair of legs, then zipped shut again. The dancer spoke no words. The only sounds were breath and teeth. Zip, zip, click, pause. Some critics called it brilliant. Others found it exhausting. One reviewer described it as watching a metaphor of identity eat itself. Another noted that by the end, no one in the audience could remember what the original suit looked like. That, said the artist, was the point. In digital art, too, the zipper has found foothold. Interactive installations feature virtual garments whose zippers react to user input. One augmented reality piece allowed users to unzip parts of a projected building to reveal its internal architecture. A metaphor for surveillance, for interiority, for curiosity itself. No one quite agreed, but the gesture was compelling. We know how to unzip. It is a universal muscle. When offered the chance, we always do. And in literature, there are poems built around the zipper's sound, short stories that begin with a single zip and unravel from there. A surreal novella written entirely in vignettes separated by the phrase, and then she zipped up. The form itself became function, compression, silence, continuation. One art book, long out of print, was itself zipped shut. A hardcover volume with a zipper sewn around its edges, trapping the pages within. The reader had to unzip the object to read it. Some could not bring themselves to do it. One copy was displayed for years, unopened, in a gallery in Sao Paulo. Eventually, someone unzipped it. The pages were blank. It was titled Narrative Number 0. The zipper, it seems, resists being purely symbolic. It insists on being used. Artists who attempt to aestheticize it must confront this. The zipper always contains potential, even when fixed in place, even when stripped of context, even when multiplied into absurdity. It still begs to be pulled. It is art with a hinge. It dares the viewer to interact, or to refrain. That may be why it remains compelling. Not because it is expressive, but because it is suggestive. A zipper is always about something else. It is always between states, closed or open. It is the gesture that matters, the motion, the implication, the transformation, which brings us inevitably to the final hall, not of this museum, of course. That would require too many permissions and an unwise amount of symbolism, but to the end of this particular exhibit, to the last 4 steps across the tiled floor, to the plaque on the wall, to the zipper and what it reveals when there is nothing left to say. We have, at last, reached the end of the zipper's real history, not because the object has vanished, or become obsolete, or disappeared into the folds of postmodern abstraction, but because it has become complete. Every innovation has been catalogued, every industrial variation named, every failure mode, repair technique, manufacturing quirk, and sociocultural cameo dutifully shelved, labeled, indexed. There is, as far as the curators can tell, nothing left to add. The modern zipper, as it exists today, is the sum of over 170 years of refinement, from Elias Howe's prototype to Whitcomb Judson's commercial flop, from Gideon Sunback's mechanical masterstroke to YKK's planetary empire of teeth. The zipper has completed its narrative arc, not through drama, but through total integration. There is a zipper somewhere right now, holding shut the side seam of a €38 raincoat. There is another inside the carrying case of a defibrillator in Nairobi. Another under the flap of a cosmetics pouch inside a stolen handbag in a rental car in Bucharest. Thousands more in parkas and pencil cases, in wetsuits and weather balloons, in wedding dresses and war gear. Their stories are not dramatic. They are continuous. The zipper is now a solved problem. That phrase is used in engineering when a design reaches its terminal form, when no significant improvement remains, when performance, cost, manufacturability, and function are in equilibrium. The bicycle reached this point. So did the paperclip, and the zipper, at least functionally, has done the same. What remains is iteration, optimization, variance, but not invention. And with that, the object disappears, not physically, but philosophically. It becomes what it always wanted to be, unnoticed. That, curiously, was always the zipper's aim. Not to dazzle, not to perform, but to vanish, to hide in seams, in lines, and shadows, to allow the fabric to remain fabric, to give structure without spectacle, to support without intrusion. It is the anti-accessory. And yet, even in this final perfection, there remains a quiet poetry, because the zipper is not just a solution, it is a rhythm. It moves, it invites the hand, it closes and opens with certainty, finality, and sound. Zizip. The decision is made. Zizip. The reversal is just as simple. In a world full of chaos and indecision, the zipper is decisive. It does not ask questions. It aligns, it grips, it moves forward, and it is done. Every garment with a zipper carries a hinge, a possibility, a boundary. Every zipper in every pocket, every bag, every shelter, every uniform is a potential act waiting to happen. To close, to protect, to hide, to expose, to begin. And now, having said everything we can factually say, we turn, not away, but inward, for what follows is not history, but interpretation. Not teeth and sliders and tapes, but ideas, memory, meaning, the things that cling quietly to objects long after we have stopped paying attention. The zipper, it seems, is not just what it does. It is what it lets us do. And in the final 4 parts of our exhibit, we will try, not to explain, but to listen to the boring thing that held everything else together. The zipper is not a metaphor. It is a mechanism. And yet, having exhausted its mechanisms, we find ourselves surrounded by metaphor. It clings to us, not because the object changed, but because we can no longer help but listen for echoes in the silence of function. When an object becomes perfect, it becomes invisible. When it becomes invisible, it becomes symbolic. So what, then, does the zipper symbolize? Not closure, exactly. That would be too obvious. Nor precision, though it has plenty. Nor intimacy, though it is close to the body. Nor utility, though it is indispensable. What the zipper symbolizes is the moment before. It is the hinge of transformation, not the act of being something, but the moment of becoming it. It is the breath before speech, the hand on the doorknob, the hush before curtains rise. The zipper is never the destination. It is the fastener between states. The slider rests at the bottom of a coat. The person is not yet warm, not yet presentable, not yet ready to step outside. And then, zip, they are. The transformation is not profound, but it is complete. That, perhaps, is what draws us to it. Its finality. Buttons equivocate. Laces delay. Snaps tease. But the zipper decides. It closes with authority, not elegance. It does not flirt. It declares. In one motion, it resolves all questions of readiness. And what of its failures? They too are potent. The stuck zipper, the jammed slider, the split seam, these are not just annoyances. They are interruptions of ritual, the failure to close what must be closed, to become what must be become. There is a peculiar kind of panic when a zipper fails. It is not about the gap. It is about the halt in transformation. The mechanism has broken. The spell is incomplete. And what of the noise? The zip. It is not beautiful, not melodic, but it is unmistakable. You can hear a zipper across a crowded room, in a silent forest, in a tent at night. You can hear it from memory. It is one of the first mechanical sounds we learn to recognize. Not dangerous, not soothing, just certain. It tells us something is now closed, or about to open. The zipper does not linger. It does not ask for applause. It exists at the edge of action. It is the prelude and the postscript, which is perhaps why it so rarely features in art, in philosophy, in poetry, except as a joke, a gesture, a euphemism. The zipper is not romantic. It is not tragic. It is not sublime. It is complete. And yet, what could be more poetic than something so complete it disappears? We live among objects, chairs, spoons, doors, phones. Their forms shape us, but few of them hold us in quite the same way the zipper does. Few follow the line of the spine, the curve of the torso. Few are positioned so close to what we conceal. Few require such cooperation, both sides aligned, teeth interlocked, pressure just right. Few reward us so immediately, zip, done. It is almost intimate. The zipper knows what we carry. It holds it, quietly, every day. No drama, no deviation. Only the small act that separates inside from outside. The zipper has no soul, but if it did, it would be shaped like an arrow, forward, inward, resolved. In our next room, we will consider time, not in terms of invention or industry, but in the way the zipper marks it. Memory, repetition, the strange loop of daily closure. The zipper, it seems, is not just a thing we use. It is a thing we are always about to use. Time, it turns out, is a zipper. It does not flow. It closes, not in a straight line, but in loops. Every morning you rise, you reach for the garment, you find the tab, you zip, and so the day begins. Not with a sunrise, not with an intention, with zip, a sealed pocket, a jacket drawn up to the throat, a bag fastened shut, the small mechanical gesture that says, ready. The zipper is a hinge in the chronology of living. We do not notice it, but it notices us. It greets us in routine, the coat zipped before stepping into the cold, the bag zipped before leaving for work, the fly zipped in a rush, always too late. It is there in children's shoes, pencil cases, toiletry kits, suitcases that open only when we're somewhere unfamiliar. It punctuates the day, and then again, at night, its quiet reversal. Unzipping is not just undressing, it is the unmaking of the day's form, the separation of self from structure, the removal of what was worn. You unzip your boots, your bag, your tension. The sound is soft, tired, resigned. The tab rests again at the bottom of the track. You are once more unfastened, and in between, so many little zips, each one forgettable, and yet cumulative. The zipper divides hours, moods, scenes. You zip up to leave. You unzip to eat. You zip halfway to think. You unzip one pocket to fumble for keys, another for coins. These are not memories. They are coordinates, temporal signposts stitched into fabric. We often speak of time as a straight line or a circle, but perhaps it is neither. Perhaps time is teeth, interlocking, repeating, precisely spaced. Each moment connects to the next, only when aligned. A misstep and the whole line jams. A misalignment and the day won't close. The zipper does not care how long the track is. It only cares whether the two sides meet. Children learn this slowly. Thread the bottom. Hold the base. Steady. Now pull. No. Wait. Again. There. Zip. Success. The sound becomes a right, an affirmation. You are now able to leave the house unassisted. You are growing up, one zip at a time, and so the zipper becomes part of aging. We start life zipped into blankets and sleep sacks. As infants, our world is zipped shut. As toddlers, we learn to unzip, to escape. Later, we learn to zip ourselves in, to comply, to present, to hold together. As we grow older, our garments become more complex. We zip jackets, coats, vests, boots, then suitcases, lunch bags, gym kits, laptops, then tents, tool bags, side pockets. The number of zippers in our life increases. The number of minutes spent zipping, unzipping. Each zip not a story, but a unit, a syllable in the language of movement, until eventually it reverses. Age slows the fingers. Zippers become stiff. The tab is too small. The track misaligns. The closure no longer closes cleanly. You ask someone to help. They zip it for you. And for a moment, you are a child again. Only this time, the ritual moves in reverse. Some zippers are never used again. A bag forgotten in the attic. A jacket that no longer fits. A tent folded and stored. The zipper lies dormant, teeth together, slider resting halfway along its track, like a thought unfinished. And sometimes, just sometimes, someone pulls it, and it remembers The zipper does not mark grand events. It is not present at weddings or funerals in any ceremonial sense. It is not toasted or named or mourned, but it is always nearby. In the dress that zipped just a little too tightly, in the bag that wouldn't close on the last night of a trip, in the jacket passed from father to son, still working, still holding, the same slider, the same teeth. The zipper is time without memory. It is the structure behind repetition, a thing that makes tomorrow possible by helping you close today. In our next and penultimate passage, we will speak of absence, what it means to forget a zipper, to ignore it, to leave it behind, and what it tells us about what matters. To forget a zipper is easy. You do it every day. You zip and move on. You don't think about the teeth, the slider, the geometry. You don't ask whether it worked, because it always does. It is the last part of the garment you see, and the first to vanish into motion. You forget your zipper when it works, but eventually everything stops being used. A coat grows old, unzipped one last time and hung in a hallway that's later emptied. A suitcase is stored under a bed and never opened again. A pencil case with a broken tab slides to the back of a drawer. The zipper remains, not broken, not mourned, just still. This is the fate of all perfect objects, to be forgotten, not thrown away, not destroyed, just unused. There are zippers in landfills, buried beneath fabric and foam, their tapes half rotted, their teeth still aligned. They do not decay easily. They outlast most of what they were attached to. If you dig them up decades later, they still open, still close. The slider may be rusted, the cloth may fray, but the mechanism, if not jammed, is ready. That readiness is what makes their silence strange. You hold a jacket that has not been worn in 15 years. The zipper still works. You zip it. There is no resistance, no stiffness, no protest. The motion is exactly as you remember. The sound is the same. And for a moment, the past is not history, but hardware. This is the zipper's quiet gift. It preserves potential. Even when forgotten, it waits. There are zippers sewn into tents that will never be pitched again, into duffel bags abandoned after a single trip, into sleeping bags stored in dusty garages next to mousetraps and paint cans. No one remembers them, but they are still zipped, still closed, still holding something that no one has thought to name. There is something tragic about that, and something noble. We build things to be used, to serve a purpose, but some things continue to serve long after we've stopped needing them. They do not complain. They do not decay theatrically. They do not seek reinvention. They simply endure. The zipper does not reinvent itself every year like the phone. It does not ask to be improved like the app. It does not demand updates. It merely waits to be pulled, which makes it, in some sense, a reminder of humility, because we are the ones who change, who age, who forget. The zipper, meanwhile, remains the same. It has no ambition, no vanity, no expiration, only presence. There is in this a kind of devotion. You may never open that pouch again, never wear that windbreaker, never unzip that sleeping bag, but the zipper does not resent you. It rests, silent, capable. We live in a culture obsessed with novelty, with what's next, but the zipper is never new, not anymore, and yet it has not been replaced, because what it does perfectly, and what it doesn't do, it leaves alone. Perhaps that is why the zipper feels, at the end, so strangely alive. Not because it has a mind, but because it accepts its place. It closes what is open. It opens what is closed. And it never asks why. In our final passage, we will let the object rest, and speak not of zippers, but of boring things themselves, of all the unnoticed, perfect things that make the world possible, and why they deserve a museum. This is not really a museum. There are no velvet ropes, no glass cases, no dramatic lighting. The exhibits are everywhere, in your drawers, on your bags, stitched into jackets, concealed in cushions, forgotten in garages. The zipper is not an artifact. It is the architecture of the unremarkable. And yet, here we are. 20 rooms. One object. Not because it demanded attention, but because it never did. We call things boring when they work too well, when they stop needing explanation, when they become so reliable, so integrated, so present, that we stop noticing them altogether. That is not failure. That is transcendence. The zipper is not alone in this. There are other objects, other devices, other miracles disguised as mundanity. The hinge, the clasp, the shoelace, the paperclip, the humble button, forever eclipsed by the flashier teeth of its mechanical cousin. These things hold our lives together and disappear while doing so. They have no branding, no status, no upgrades. They are not discussed at conferences or featured in magazines. They are not collected except by strange men in basements. They are not praised except by curators with too much time. But they are there, and they matter. The zipper taught us that perfection can be manufactured, that closure can be elegant, that transformation can be built into cloth, that the smallest sounds, zip, can mark the beginning of a journey or its end. We walk past our tools every day. We open and close our lives without noticing what opens and closes them. The zipper is not beautiful. It is not poetic. It is not thrilling. It is just correct. And maybe, just maybe, that is what boring things are for. To remind us that not everything has to be loud, that not everything has to be reinvented, that some things can be made once, made well, and left to do their job, silently, precisely, patiently, to close what is open, to open what is closed, to ask nothing in return. Thank you for visiting the Museum of Boring Things. Tonight's exhibit was the zipper. Tomorrow, well, there are still hinges.